Are you a salon professional who's dreamt about opening their own salon one day? Or maybe you already have. You worked in a salon and you left to go and open your own business and realized that it's not as easy or as glamorous as you thought it might be. Maybe you're a salon owner. Have you ever struggled with staff retention issues? Have you ever had a salon employee leave to go and open up their own salon, one of your better employees? Or maybe you're just overwhelmed with all the work that it takes to be a salon owner, and you just can't envision what the exit plan might be for you. If any of these situations apply to you, stay tuned. We have got a blockbuster episode today with one solution that answers and solves all of those problems I just highlighted. And we have 3 salon owners here to share with us how they have implemented that solution into their salon companies for you to learn. Do not leave. Stay tuned right now. Welcome to the Salon Scoop, a podcast by Salon S.O.S. I'm your host, Scott Moon, the founder of Salon S.O.S., and I'm obsessed with helping salon professionals live their best life. In this show, we shop talk all things salon to bring you real-life stories, debates, entertainment, and inspiration to help you find happiness and success in this beautiful industry. If you work in the salon industry in any capacity, this podcast is open to you. So set down your scissors or rinse out that toner and let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Salon Scoop podcast. I'm your host, Scott Moon. Super excited to be here with you today, along with not 1, not 2, but 3 guests. We have a roundtable podcast discussion today talking about everything from staff retention to salon owner exit strategies, and really want to get some key insights and learnings from these 3 incredible guests that have a story to share about how they've been able to deal with that combined issue of staff retention and also what's my exit plan, like what's my game plan to get out of the salon one day, but still maybe leave behind the legacy of all the years, all the blood, sweat, and tears that I've put into this business, as opposed to just having to walk away and shut the door. So there's some great strategies out there that we're going to delve into. I want to thank our 3 guests for being here with us today and sharing their stories. It's an honor to have each of you on the show with me today. Let's take a couple minutes here quickly just to get to know our guests. So if each of you could quickly introduce yourselves to our audience and let them know sort of who you are, where you're from, and we can sort of get into your stories. So why don't we start with you, Joseph?
My name's Joe. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I have 2 salons. I started the first one in 2009 and the second one in 2015. And we are just over 65 employees currently. I'm a non-practitioner. I started off working at the front desk and doing a majority of the PDMs.
Amazing. Thank you. Danielle?
Hey, thanks, Scott. My name is Danielle Cherewyk. I am in Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada. And I also have 2 salons. They're both right here in Grand Prairie. So like about a 5 to 10 minute drive apart between the 2 of them, and a hair school in the recent year we've just purchased. We have 40-ish employees between the 3 locations, and we have been in business for just over 15 years. But I'm a 2nd generation stylist. I've been in the industry for just over 20. And yeah, it's a big part of my identity for sure. Kind of grew up right from the womb in the salon industry and still loving it.
Nice. And finally, Rheannon.
Hi, my name is Rheannon White. I live in Fort St. John, BC, in like northern eastern BC. I'm about 3 hours from Danielle. So we go to Grand Prairie to go to Costco because our town is pretty tiny. we have a multi-level salon, just one location. I have 18 on staff, like 18 employees. We've grown quite a bit in the last like 4 years specifically. So I'm really excited to be part of the podcast to learn everybody's story, because everybody's got such a different approach when they got into business, how they got into it. I've been a stylist for about 25 years this August, and I've had the salon company for 11, and had a partner buy-in a year and a half ago.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you again all for being here today. Let's jump in and then start talking about some of the meat of the discussion here. We're talking about having staff, employees buying in and becoming sort of shareholders of the organization, so that they have a certain sense of ownership, and that there's a long-term sort of transition plan for, you know, you as a salon owner to exit. But it's also a great way to kind of bring, you know, that next generation in as partners in the business to help make sure that it continues to grow. Now, if you haven't listened yet to our other podcast episode, we did an episode recently where we had a couple of salon owners that did an outright sale to an outsider, where they kind of like cut the ties, sold their salon. If that's something that is interesting for you to learn about, highly encourage you to go and check out that episode as well. But today we're talking about a bit of a different strategy when it comes to a type of sale of your business, where you are staying in for a period of time and kind of slowly and gradually bringing in others to be part owners in your business. So I want to understand from each of you, what was the trigger for you, right? That the main reason that made you decide that it was time for you to bring in some shareholders, right? Some partners, you know, internally from your organization. Like, what was that trigger that said, like, I think I'm ready to do this? Let's start with Danielle, then we'll move to Rheannon, and then Joe, go that order on this question.
Sure, thanks, Scott. For me, you know, I really came into the industry knowing that I wanted to be an owner. Like, I wanted to own, I had managed a restaurant while I was in high school. I love systems, and I love like the back end and being a part of that visionary. That's just who I am. So when I opened my salon, I knew that as a stylist, that was the path that I wanted. So as an owner, I also wanted to give stylists that path, or, you know, anybody in my company. I like that Joe started on the front desk. Anybody in my company that wants to be a part of it. And I find that, you know, for us, it was just like at a point where I didn't want to grow bigger by myself. It wasn't fun to take on more workload. Like, the fun part is growing the people and providing them the opportunity. And so when we had grown to a point where we had people that were looking at salon ownership, you know, I don't know if any of you guys have ever done an interview where they're like, I want to own a salon. I'm like, great, I hope it's a part of this one. And so, you know, when we had identified a few people who wanted to be a part of that path, that was the trigger for us to start taking action of creating a shareholder plan.
Nice. Rheannon?
Thank you. I agree with Danielle. I mean, it's lonely at the top, you know, like unless you're in it, you don't understand what that meaning really truly means until you are at the top and you're leading a team, and it's tough. So for me, bringing in a shareholder, like, I mean, I was doing all of it. I was working 40 hours a week behind the chair. I was trying to run the business. I was kind of like a little bit of, I'll call it a hot mess, but I felt like I still had it together. But and Summit obviously drastically helped that come along, and you know, with the structured systems. But bringing on a shareholder meant I had somebody else that was truly as invested as me into my baby that, you know, we built from nothing. And like, I knew that we were taking the salon to the next step. I needed a partner to do that, to come in and help me do that. I couldn't do it by myself. So for me, I know Danielle said she's behind the chair 10 hours a month. I'm still behind the chair like 25 hours a week, and then training and educating on the side. So it's still an integral part of how the company is so new and little. We're just still growing it. So to me, in the very beginning stages, it's still really important to be present like that. But as I try to step back, it's harder and harder to step away from what I truly love, which is making people feel good. But growing people is really why I'm here, because I don't want to do it by myself. It's not very fulfilling for me anyways.
Love that.
Excuse me, for myself, I feel like from the beginning, I always wanted to have a shareholder involved because I feel like if they're amongst the team and they're help building the salon, that letting them have the opportunity to buy in and also build a future or retirement for them was key. As far as the timeline, I think it came about right around 30 employees. When you're doing all those PDMs and you're involved in the day-to-day, and as a business owner, we have to wear different hats. But it gets to the point where you just don't have the time in the day to actually deliver the quality that you were delivering prior. So you have to for me, I think bringing in the shareholders, the first game plan is staff retention, but ultimately it also is keeping it consistent. And what got us to the level that we were at that point was not going to get us to the next level, as Rheannon was just saying.
Yeah, that's also a consideration. It's like, how do you get to the next point? If you're just the individual, there's only so much that you can do. There's only so many hours that you have. And it's tough. And I love, what Danielle mentioned. Sometimes in interviews at the early stages, you have people coming in saying, yeah, their long-term vision is that they want to own a salon one day. And I'm sure every single person on this, listening to this episode right now, regardless of your position in the salon industry, knows people that have left the salon that they were working in to go and open up their own salon. A lot of people have that desire inside of them. And what this opportunity provides is for those individuals to be able to be a salon owner, but within the salon that they have already kind of grown to love. So I'd love to hear from each of you your perspective of what the benefits are to the employees that you bring on as a shareholder, and I guess kind of how you present it internally and as to those benefits, as opposed to somebody thinking to leave and go and open their own salon somewhere else. Rheannon, let's start with you this time.
Well, I think like specifically in my experience, I had a service provider who I've known for like 20 years. We used to work together quite a long time ago. She went and did her own thing. I opened the shop, and she was sort of like, I knew her, she was around town. And then she came to work for me after COVID. She was like, I'm done being by myself. It's lonely. We're the same age. We're in our 40s. And when you've been doing hair for 20 years, like you gotta get excited about things to like lots of like taking new training, trying to like drum up new ideas. So when she was on board with us, she was here for about 5 years, and we were just running out of space. We were like bumping into everybody. We were trying to offer new services and trying to grow the team, and it was just like really difficult to do in the space that we were in. So for me, we had Summit evaluate the company. And the numbers came back and they were a lot less than I thought they would be, but we were still kind of recovering from COVID a little bit. So basically it was like, I presented to her, like, this is what I want to do. I'm still a really integral part of working within the company, not only just behind the scenes. And this is what I want to do with the company. And this is the 5-year projection. And I estimated the value at 6 times what Summit gave. She was happy to buy in at that amount, and she did. So I sold 25% of the shares of the company to her, and we sat down and spent a lot of time figuring out where she was going to be the most integral part of the growth of the company. And I had to learn to let go of some of that, which when it's just you by yourself, that's kind of hard to do, because I had to kind of allow space for her to like make mistakes and like learn as she went, because I've already had years of doing that. But so far it's been great. I mean, I'm really happy with the outcome, and so we can only go up from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely get into the money part in a little bit. Joe, let's come to you. Like, how do you present it, like in terms of the advantages, the benefits to somebody to joining as a shareholder as opposed to leaving and going to open their own salon?
Oh, I think it gives your average stylist the opportunity to buy in at at a price point that they're familiar with, that's what's the word, it's more cost effective for them instead of taking large loans out and trying to do it all themselves. And I feel like it's a game plan. For me, we created basically a 17-year exit strategy. So shares will be relinquished every year at a set number. And it kind of gives them a game plan that we can actually do the math exercise behind and run the numbers and kind of pitch it. It also gives the opportunity, like when you're in a stylist career for say 25 years or something, it gives them more of an opportunity when they get to that stage of empowerment, usually at a certain tenure in their career. They kind of want to be more involved in helping grow the next generation. And it gives them a little bit of control of their environment that they work behind. They don't have, in my situation where I'm hiring somebody outside the salon floor and then kind of just putting them into the culture, it helps them kind of have more hands-on in that. So there's a lot of benefits, in my opinion, and why they would want to become a shareholder. And I think that financial is probably the primary one. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was great, Joe. I would add to that, like, I think that there's a lot of managed risk when they're buying into an existing salon that's already kind of weathered the storms. It's like, and Simon Sinek talks about this with experience. He says, it's just so relevant. Like, when you're new, it's like a new boat going out into the ocean. You don't know how it's going to hold up in the storm if you're opening a new salon. And all businesses are going to have those seasons of stormy weather. When you're buying into an existing salon that has been open for a while and has weathered those storms, you know that you're in a sturdy ship. So they're kind of buying into something that has the managed risk in that regard. Also, like if you're opening a business from scratch, if they're going off on their own, they have to be prepared to now be a full-time business owner on their own and figure it out while probably still being a service provider, working whatever role they are in the salons. Now they're having 2 full-time jobs. So my stylist could buy in and still have a good work-life balance. And I know when I was starting out buying a salon, like work-life balance was non-existent. So I think that they're getting some of those benefits as well. I know for me, it's like, I want to be a part of something. If there's something that's working and it's doing really good and I can enhance it, opposed to, starting a new invention, that's just like the same and now they're becoming competition. I think that that's a whole other ball game that they would be going down, if they're going that route. So, all of those things present a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty when they're going off on their own opposed to buying in.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So there's clearly a lot of advantages as a service provider, as an employee, to be like, you know what, maybe if I have the opportunity to kind of buy into this existing salon and be a part owner for now, and maybe be able to, grow that percentage of ownership, maybe bit by bit over time, that's fantastic. And there's a lot less risk involved, as you kind of outlined, a lot less financial output, right off the bat, which is important. So that's cool. Now from a salon owner standpoint, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, you know what, this sounds pretty interesting for me too, because now I can have people that I know and trust take on a little bit more of a leadership role and kind of help me, steer the boat, help me with, with running this business, help me grow it to the next level. So how do I, as a salon owner, go about picking the right people? Do I go and like hand pick people? Do I kind of just make this an open opportunity for everybody? I don't want some employees to feel like, they didn't have the opportunity because I only asked, Mary and Nancy to get involved. How do you deal with that from a salon owner standpoint? If I'm listening here and I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. I'm interested in maybe doing this. How do I go about it? Joe, how would you answer that question about who do you approach and who do you make this opportunity available to?
Yeah, so 2 points I think about. From a strategic standpoint in the very beginning, to make it successful, I think that you have to strategically pick people that's going to help build a leadership foundation. I have not incorporated this as of yet, but I did create criteria to be a potential shareholder. And the only reason why I did that was I don't want the culture of my team to perceive that I was cherry picking people or you had to get close to somebody. So I did want to create criteria as, like, for example, being a level 4 if you're in a level salon, being a full-time stylist, being a part of the leadership team, whether you're a coach, an educator, the associate program teacher, or some kind of management level tenure to qualify. So then, as part of our as part of our culture and policy, everybody can earn the right to qualify for a shareholder.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so in order to be a shareholder, you have to be at a certain level, have certain experience, have certain responsibilities already, but everybody can work their way to get to that point, and then they would have the opportunity to be part of it. Makes sense. Danielle, how about on your side?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I believe clear is kind, so I want my team to know how they can kind of pass, like how they can get involved with that. To your point, like, why did you pick her or not him? So for us, we did set some guidelines. Like a few things that we have in place in our contracts is that they have to be an employee for at least 5 years, and they need to work full time within the company. So we're not looking for silent partners. That was just not what we were looking for. And then from there, just like what other growth opportunities are available for them. So for us, we have a level system and different certifications through our front desk. So both of those departments have growth opportunities. And as they continue to grow, we're just working on like personalized career plans within their PDMs. So like, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to grow to? If they were looking to go into shareholder, we would start looking at like getting them involved in our mentor path or in our leadership path, to like start educating within our company or being on our leadership and innovation team. And that would lead to that next step of a buy-in.
Nice. Okay. And Rhiannon, how about on your side? How do you decide who to present this opportunity to?
I have to agree with both Danielle and Joe that that's definitely something that I'd be looking for, is someone that works full time. I'd say a minimum of like 4 or 5 years, someone that I know is directly invested in really growing and building the brand of the company and continuing to help that grow along as they join the team, and making sure they're an integral part of either the education team, leadership team. That's a big deal, wanting to make sure that they got the same vision that you have, so the growth is the same across the board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it sounds like, there's some qualifications, that should be set to make sure that there's let's say a fair and equitable opportunity for everybody if they have, demonstrated that they've met, some of these criteria in your salon. Let's talk about now the responsibilities. So there's one thing of, okay, there's going to be a financial transaction, and we'll come back to that, to actually acquire a percentage of the shares, right, to become a part owner. But how do you go about determining now, does that bring them a new set of responsibilities? How do you, as the current owner, delegate or sort of, give up some of the, because if it's been just you making all the decisions all the time, this is going to be probably a difficult thing to manage, although everybody wants some help. How do you go about establishing kind of clear responsibilities for these new shareholders? How have you done that in your companies? Let's start with you, Danielle.
Thanks, Scott. For us, our shareholder responsibility is a monthly shareholder meeting. So their responsibility as a partner essentially is just around the finances side of it. However, each one of us, we have clearly defined our jobs within the company, and we're paid for those jobs. So we don't essentially have like a sweat equity responsibility within the company. Doesn't mean that we don't show up. Actually, last weekend, we decided that we wanted to do a refresh on our classroom at the schools. So the three of us painted on the weekend. So I guess there, sometimes we'll show up for things like that. But as far as like ongoing roles as a shareholder, we've delegated those more as management roles and are paid as managers for those roles. So each one of my shareholders are both a location manager at one of our salon locations, and I've been overseeing the school a little bit more. We have a manager there as well who's not a shareholder. And so that's kind of how we've done roles. We try and keep them like very clearly defined and then paid for that role so that it can be hard to say like, hey, this role's worth this much money and this role's worth that much money, and your partnership means you have to do X amount. It gets we felt like that was a little bit messy for us. So we've defined them as management roles. We're paid for the management roles. Their responsibility as shareholders is just that monthly meeting.
Fair enough. Rheannon?
I honestly, pretty much what Danielle had to say. Same thing. We meet usually, I only have one shareholder, so we usually meet once a week, talk about the ongoings at the salon. We don't work the same hours, and I have a very different role in the company that she has. So, in the beginning when she came in, it was like, okay, this is where I think like we both agreed, like this is where we think you will be the best utilized. So again, like Danielle was saying to what she said, she's pretty much like a management role as owner number two. Nobody really knows how much she's invested, and that's nobody's business either. So she sits in a management position. I also have a salon manager as well who's wants to maybe come in. We've sort of like for her to come in, I think I would approach it a little different than the other shareholder because we have a bit more of a background on a personal level. So it's a little different. But again, in a management role where they're invested in the company, and then just discussing where and how the how-tos of how they're going to come in, but still meeting like once a month at least. We meet once a week, talk about that shareholder stuff at least once a month. We go over things like that. Same thing.
Fair. Joe?
Yeah, we're pretty much set the same. We don't have any accountability around the responsibilities as shareholders, but in my position, we relinquish small percentages in the beginning. And at some time, I think that will pivot and change, and they'll have to have some responsibilities when they grow. However, I feel that it's most appreciated that people are paid for what they're doing in today's business environment.
Makes sense. I'm gonna quick sub question just to Joe and Danielle, because you each have two locations. So, and Danielle, you mentioned that you have one shareholder now in each location. That's kind of the manager of each location. Joe, I'm not sure if it's the same. How many shareholders do you have, Joe, in your?
I have two right now, and with 3 more joining this year.
Got it. So I'm curious to know, with the two, and Danielle specifically, they're managing each location. Are they a shareholder in just the one location that they manage, or are they a shareholder in the whole thing? And is there any conflict in that I don't know, one salon is a bigger salon and has more traffic and it's getting better, better support or whatnot, and that's one of the shareholders feels that it's not fair or whatnot. How have you kind of set that up and managed that on each of your sides?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, we did look at all of those scenarios when we were getting into it. We decided to keep it as a full corporation. Kind of like for us, what we looked at was like Starbucks versus some franchises that maybe have different franchisees that do things differently. We happen to have a gym here in my city that has 2 locations, and each location is owned by a different franchisee. And when members switch gyms, like the owners are always fighting. And we kind of witnessed that, and we're like, we never want our company to be pitted against each other. We want to grow as one, and we want to do what's best for our clients and for our team, and then the business. It always has to be a triple win. And so that triple win was only if we stayed as one. We didn't want them to be like, we didn't want there to be hard feelings if a stylist was moving across town and it worked better for her to work at one location and then be like, well, no, because I don't want to lose your profit. Like, it just didn't work like that for us. So we kept it all as one corporation. And like I said, we actually purchased the school, which also falls under our same umbrella. It's a separate company, but same shareholder percentages, for the simple reason that the businesses are so alike. It's too easy for us to share resources. And I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, we didn't get our shipment at this location, so we're going to borrow over there. And now we need to, it's just is a little bit messy accounting to start to separate them. We could have done it, but we just felt like for the nature of our business and how much of a community we want to build within them, it worked better for us to stay as a corporation. So they do each manage one location, but that's a management role separate from our total ownership, which is a total ownership of all 3 locations.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's important because there's a lot of issues that could come up and whatnot. So, Joe, how's it managed in your multi-location business?
Yeah, so before we sold shares, we actually built an office outside the salon, and that was the same concern with the second salon being opened about 6 years after the first one. As you know, when you open a new location, a lot of resources have to go to that location. So as the vision for future locations, you're constantly thinking about that. I did the same thing Danielle did. I basically backed it up a little bit. I created a parent company that bought both salons. So then when people buy in, they're buying into both companies. So therefore, what's good for me is good for them. And there's really going to be no challenge as far as, resources being used at one place more than the other.
Perfect. Okay, that's I think that's a great message and learning for people out there that might have multiple locations and sort of how to manage it. It seems like you both had a similar alignment in the thought process around that. All right, let's delve into the money a little bit because that's always an important factor. The owners are thinking about that. The people who are buying in are thinking about that. So let's talk about first how you came up with the valuation. Rheannon, you had sort of touched upon that a little bit earlier, but we'll go deeper. So how you came up with the value and how much you decided to sell, right, to each individual employee that was coming on board, and then how they financed that. Did they have to pay it all up front? Is it something that could be like on a payment plan, or how did you facilitate that to make it accessible to them? And we'll start back with you, Rheannon. You had sort of kicked off, and then we'll do the loop.
Okay. Well, specifically for me, this particular shareholder, well, I knew I didn't want to this is my first time. I was letting somebody in, I didn't want to sell more than 25%. Just to start out, I kind of wanted to see how it was going to go, I guess. Like, I already knew that she was invested in. I didn't have obviously there was a massive risk involved in that. Joe and Danielle can contest to that when you bring someone new on. I mean, I knew her really well and trusted her, but I was still a big jump. So for me, I didn't want to sell more than 25%, but I wanted to make sure it was enough where she felt like she was still really invested and still as the owner, if that makes sense. Because I think sometimes, just stories I've heard, people come in at 10% and they feel like, well, it's only 10%. Is it that big of a deal? I've just heard all kinds of stories. So I'm always interested how other salons are doing it. We did have the company evaluated. And I had basically spent about 7 months coming up with a 5-year projection on the new plan. So we had a salon, 8 chairs, and a tiny spa room with one spa provider. When we decided to go in, when I brought the shareholder in, and basically what I sold her was a 5-year plan to open a barbershop umbrella and a big spa, and then keep the salon basically where the same size that it was before. But essentially what I was doing is opening 2 baby companies within the major umbrella of the company. So I had a business plan for those 3 items and how we were going to make them grow. And it's been awesome, actually. I mean, we've had lots of bumps. You guys know what the first year is like in business, and it's been like a little tough, but it's been really great. So we basically, when I came up with the evaluation, I had a recommendation from a gentleman at Summit. He was like, this is horrendous. I don't think she's ever going to go for this. And I was like, but this is what we're going to do in 5 years. So to me, I think that's worth it. And she agreed. And so
And so
that's,
how did the actual payment work? Did she have to pay the 25% like upfront and here you go, you have it all? Or is it like a vesting percentage that she was earning over time or through like a payment plan?
we actually, when we sat down and talked about it, like we gave her, like we presented two options, basically. One was, you know, payments per month. When those payments are finished and you are an actual, you know, 25% is paid, then you're a 25% shareholder. In her case, it was, well, 25%, or it was a lump sum. She chose to pay the lump sum, which was great. I got the money up front. That is not very common though in our industry. And you guys know that doesn't usually happen where someone just comes in with a wad of cash. So I got lucky that way. But I obviously, if I had another shareholder come on, I would be presenting a very different payment schedule of how this would work and the amount of shares and what that would look like.
Fair enough. Joe, how about in your case?
My case, we used an outside company. We valued the company, and then I actually sold it for less than the valuation, the first 15%. So the way I figured it out was sell 15% the first year, and then I'm going to sell 5% every year for the next 17 years. And rain or shine, doesn't matter. That's just what we're going to do. And I put my attention. I was with somebody one time and they were telling me a story, and they had 10 locations and they had a significant number, but it was very consistent across each location. And that's a little abnormal in our industry where, you know, I can see where all the resources are at. If someone has a multi-location, usually one does significantly well or better than the other two. So, and I asked her what was the strategy that got her that level of consistency across 10 locations, and she said it was my team. So at that point, that was about 2 years ago. At that point is when I really started focusing on, instead of the growth of the companies, let's focus on the team and let the team dictate how many locations we will open. So for me, it was important to bring in the right people initially. So I sold, the original plan was to bring in I offered 6%, 6%, 2%, and 1% to 4 people. And based on what they've contributed to the company and my belief. And we ended up, one of the 6% didn't do it. So I sold, and one of the 1% didn't do it. So I ended up selling 6% to one person and 3% to the other. So that left me that extra percent, which then in this year I added to this year. So now the 3 people I told you guys earlier I was going to bring in, they all were offered 2% each this year. And then the way we asked them to repay that was we put 10% down, and then it's amortized over a 5-year schedule with an interest rate that's a little bit below the prime right now. And I think that I think the repayment, if you do the return on investment from only putting 10% down, it's tremendous. I think I did the math for them, and after the first year of being a shareholder, they had a 300% return on the money compared to, you know, many investors just looking for 20%.
Danielle, how about on your side?
We also had a few valuations done. So we got 2 different companies to do valuations, and we appreciated, like, when we had our summit valuation, they gave us some ranges. Because to Rheannon's point, like sometimes those numbers come in and they don't, well, even Joe said like didn't quite go with the number from the valuation. We also didn't, but I guess we fell in the range. But there's like a lot of factors, like what are the stories to the numbers? Like numbers don't lie, but there is some stories that go to those numbers. We had our first year that was included in that valuation, we only had 1 location. And then we also had some COVID years in there where we were closed for, anyways, we won't go there. But there was some COVID numbers in there as well. So we found that, and then again, also presented that to them so that they could take it to a bank to get loans. I wanted them to go through that whole process of buying in and having like that, like, what does it really look like to go and get a business loan to do all of that, and go to the bank and get the loan. So they bought them out in full. One had a loan, one did not. And so that was just I think a cool opportunity for them to go through that. We sold 20%. So that was the most that I wanted to sell at this point. I'm only level 36. So I love Joe's 5% every year. I'm learning a lot. So that's a great analogy. But I'm like, I still want to own my company. Like I still want to be a part of it. I just also want to have opportunity, but there's not so much an exit strategy in there yet. It's top of mind and for sure a part of that, but that wasn't the only thing. We did have a funny little thing happen afterwards though. So a year after, what we learned is they each bought 10%. They wanted the max amount that they could buy in. And we learned in Canada, if you own under or 10% or less, you have to claim that income as personal income and pay personal income tax on their dividends. However, if you own over 10%, you can have it corporate income, which is just a little bit of a different tax strategy for them. So a part way into their ownership already, we did a restructure. We broke into 1,000 shares instead of just 100, and then sold them each one extra share so that they could have a corporate tax strategy instead of a personal tax strategy. So just playing a little bit about that game. We have a great tax strategist that I'd highly recommend for anybody getting into this, is having a really great tax strategist and lawyer to help you along the way. So you don't have to repay somebody to do it.
Yeah, that's a great pickup. That obviously is part of the Canadian tax law. I can't speak to the American tax laws, but so it's essentially they now own like 10.01% each. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Let's take the money conversation one step further, because people who are buying in, it's great. Okay, I own 2%, I own 10%, I own 25%, whatever the case may be. It's like, all right, great. Now what? Like, when do I get the return on that investment? So how often do you pay out the way that it works is that companies pay back profit in percentage to the owners. So how do you determine how frequently do you pay out the dividends of profits to your shareholders? Go ahead, Rheannon. It's a quick one.
Okay. For us, it's yearly. But the shareholder that I have has only been with me as a shareholder for just over a year. So, we obviously, because of the debt in the company, she chose to invest her dividend back into the company, which is awesome. And so that's how we've decided to do it, is just yearly sit down. Now, obviously, if the company starts making, pardon me, a lot of money and her dividends are quite a bit higher, then we can just revisit that conversation at our shareholder meeting to Danielle's, monthly, like, hey, we're starting to see a lot of revenue within the company. And the dividends are quite a bit higher than we initially projected, which is also an awesome issue to be having as a salon owner. We would revisit that, but right now it's yearly. So I'm not sure. They're double locations, I feel like, and just more people. It's so much more complicated than what I have here for these guys, I think.
Well, let's find out. Joe, how's the timing schedule on your side?
I'm sorry, I missed the question there. Tell me the question.
No problem. So how often do you do dividend payouts to the shareholders?
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
Yeah. Yeah, we at the end of the quarter, we have it within 30 days. We have the books adjusted and then we cut the checks. Yep.
Nice. Danielle, how about on your side?
Quarterly, but I'm going to add to that. When you own a business, sometimes it also goes the opposite way. And we've been in an investment phase in our business. So last year, sometimes it meant they had to pay into the business because we purchased within that corporation. So we do it quarterly also, but that doesn't always mean that there's going to be a check. To Rhiannon's point, like you can have different strategies along that, but we will pay out those profit or dividend checks quarterly, or they're paying into the company if that's what the company needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk quickly also about, did any of you notice a difference in the day-to-day behavior of your shareholders once they became official shareholders? Like, did you notice any difference in terms of how they acted in the salon, in terms of the the subliminal role maybe that they started to take on in the company. Did anyone notice any differences?
Totally. Totally. I mean, it was night and day. I think everybody was in it to win it, but once they became a shareholder, I think what we tend to call big glasses versus little glasses. I think they just took off their glasses and put their big glasses on, because now it's not a race anymore. It's not just a race to the paycheck. It's more of a strategy and a marathon at that point.
Nice. Anyone else have something to comment, Danielle?
For me, now I can see I can see tremendous growth from when they came in, but I think that mine were really already operating at that level culturally, that which was why they're shareholders. My husband jokes, he's like, "Oh, how much are you going to get paid for your blood, sweat, and tears into the business?" And I was like, "Well, if we're really counting blood, sweat, and tears, like my partner Bailey has way more blood, sweat, and tears. She cries all the time. That's a joke that we have internally, so I can share it here. But she has as much blood, sweat, and tears. She's been a part of our setup. Same with the other one too. Less tears on her part, but I mean, they were already operating at that level. However, since they've bought in, one of our shareholder policies is that we each do quarterly personal development in some way. And so the growth that I've seen in them in the last 2 years over time has just been, it's such a blessing to watch. It's remarkable.
Nice.
I did notice a huge difference. I mean, she went from being a service provider and clocking in and clocking out and making everybody look and feel good to suddenly she's like, I think she was involved for about a month and she's like, how on earth have you been doing this by yourself? Like, how do you do this? How do you like, how? So for her, I've watched her like grow immensely as a leader because she's like one of those service providers that like, and you guys can contest to this as salon owners, she just wants everybody to be happy. And so she's like the golden retriever of the room, if that makes sense. So she's like, she doesn't want to stir at the pot ever. So for her to go into like a management role and really be in charge of like a lot more responsibility, she had to like really step it up. So she's drastically changed and in a great way. And she's like, she always tells me like, you changed my whole life. This changed my whole life. Like, this is like changed my life. And even her family's like, this is the best thing she's ever done. And she's totally different. So just stepping into more of a leadership role, you've got to just, you don't have time to like, oh, I need to do that. It's like, you need to step it up now because there's a lot on the line, right?
Yeah, amazing. This is one of the things that I hear the most from salons that have implemented this strategy is seeing this shift all of a sudden in the day-to-day behavior of these people who were just regular employees that are now shareholders. And kind of to Joe's point, like the big glasses, they tend to all of a sudden have this like much greater perspective on the business, and now they're your ally, right, at doing all the little things that are important for the growth of the company. They're no longer, the ones that are wasting away in the back room doing things. They're noticing that other people are wasting the time in the back room, and they're thinking differently about it, saying, "Hey, wait a second, like, you know what, we should be doing stuff, and you don't have to be the bad cop all the time. You have other people sort of, on your side now that are seeing how the place can be run more effectively and sort of rallying the groups together." So that seems to be a really, really huge advantage that tends to work, that improves the culture. And all of a sudden, when this starts working together, the wheels are in motion. That's where you're getting positive momentum for your business. So, one of the big quotes in our industry has always been, stop worrying as a salon owner about growing the business. If you focus on growing the team will grow the business. And that's how it kind of has to work to be, to get yourself that great long-term success for your salon company. Okay, we are winding down, to the end of the episode here. I want to close off by giving each of you the opportunity to speak one-to-one to. We'll go to salon owners out there right now that are thinking about this, saying, "Wow, you know what? This makes a lot of sense. This has opened up my eyes to something that I hadn't maybe even thought about before." what would be one piece of advice, and I'm hoping that we get a different piece of advice from each of you, that you would give to a salon owner who is all of a sudden thinking about implementing this shareholder strategy in their own company, something that they should be aware of, something they should watch out for, something you would tell them to focus on. Let's start with Joe, then Danielle and Rheannon to finish off.
For me, I think it's a no-brainer, and I think that I think without a strong team or shareholders, I think you're going to be capped at what you can do. You know, you always heard it before. Owning 50% of a watermelon is a lot better than owning 100% of an orange. You know, so I feel like if you can have the vision to create a team, I mean, you know, we work hard as entrepreneurs. You know, I've been going hard for 25 years, and now I want the opportunity to buy some of my time back. And I feel like a shareholder program answers that, solves that equation for me.
Amazing. Danielle, one piece of advice that you would give to a salon owner who's thinking about doing this, something they should watch out for, something that they should do.
Yeah, I would say like you need to really have your stuff in order. Like start there. If you're just getting into it, get your stuff in order. Like no more toilet paper bonuses. Clean up all of those little things and make sure you have a great Rolodex of people to support you. You don't have to do it alone. Like you know, having Summit Financial, they know our industry, but there's lots of companies that can do valuations and do more than one. Make sure you have a great accountant and a great tax strategist and a great lawyer to go through, and don't feel embarrassed to ask questions. There's no stupid questions. Like you're selling a part of your business. You want to have super clear agreements for yourself to protect yourself. And also that should be a priority to protect the people who are your potential partners, like making sure that you have things in place. Like, what is it going to look like if they leave? Like, you know, if they don't want to be a shareholder anymore, or it's not a fit anymore, and having all of that laid out, I think, just created so much certainty in our partnership. It has been an incredible experience for me, but I've seen it go the other way when you don't have those things in place. So build that Rolodex and make sure you lean into people for support.
Yeah, that's a great point. We didn't talk into the depth and the legal aspect, but obviously, you know, there's legal documents that would be like a shareholder agreement that has to, you know, cover all the different scenarios that could happen. And you definitely need a experienced, you know, lawyer to help you draft that paperwork that everybody's going to be signing as a joint shareholder agreement. So great points. Rheannon, how about you?
I would agree with both of them. I think number one, you can't grow without change. So if you're not ready to make change within your salon company, you can't you can't grow. So kind of having a clear plan, but also being comfortable being uncomfortable, because this is all like a new venture that you're heading into. So a great lawyer, a great accountant, key bookkeeping, knowing your numbers, knowing where you're at, understanding your company, and having a clear guideline of what it looks like if like women get pregnant. Hi, we can't work all the time because we now have other responsibilities like family and children. So what is that going to look like? What if I'm not here? What if I don't want to be a shareholder anymore? Or for me, like I want an exit strategy. Like I'm, you know, in the next 10 years, I have to start thinking about stuff like that. So getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And at the same time, I got some really great advice from I don't actually know her exact role with Summit. Her name is Britta. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? Danielle, do you know Britta? Scott?
Yeah, absolutely.
She gave me some amazing advice, and she said, when you go into partnership with somebody, that's your work wife now. So don't fight in front of the kids. Make sure like you understand each other's roles within the company. So this person has this role, this one does this. I'm not going to question her ability to do that. I'm going to let her do it. We have like our meetings and we figure it out. But again, back to what I said before, with change comes growth. So you can't have one without the other.
Love that. Great insights and advice from each of you. Joe, Danielle, Rheannon, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining us today and just being so willing and open to share your stories. This, you know, typically these types of conversations are a little bit more, you know, private. It's, you know, it's private financial transactions and whatnot. But I think sharing a lot of these insights will be extremely beneficial to so many people in our industry, both whether they're salon owners or they are, salon employees. Today, I think it's really opened up a lot of eyes about different possibilities for growing in a different way, right? That's going to allow everybody to win together. So we will absolutely include contact information for each of these three amazing individuals and clearly industry leaders in the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out with additional questions, we definitely encourage you to do that. And in the meantime, we hope that you've digested. If maybe you know somebody who's in the position in the industry that could be benefit from this information, please feel free to reach out to them, share this episode so they can gain the learnings and insights, and grow their salon company. That's really what we're here to do, provide as much insights and tools and strategies and tips as we possibly can. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks for joining. Again, guests, any last questions or comments on your behalf?
No.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. I appreciate all your guys' time. And I actually got lots out of this from you guys. And I love hearing your stories. I think it's awesome.
Agreed.
Cheers.
Yeah, a great community of salon professionals working together for the betterment of the industry. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day and stay stylish. Thank you so much for listening to the Salon Scoop podcast. This show is produced by Salon S.O.S, a digital marketing agency by industry professionals for industry professionals. If you want simple and affordable solutions for any of your salon marketing needs, such as websites, client loyalty, Google search rankings, social media, or more, come visit us at salonsos.ca or on Instagram at salon.s.o.s. If you want to hear more episodes like this and help us continue to bring the industry great content, it would mean so much to us if you would support us in one of the following ways. Either share this episode with one other industry professional and rate the show on Spotify or write us a quick review on Apple Music. We want to hear your feedback. If you have follow-up questions or ideas for future episodes, please reach out. DM us on Instagram at salonus.s.o.s or hit us up on our website again at salonsos.ca. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go get your hustle on, keep smiling, and we'll catch you on our next episode.